Welcome. Yes, I am in fact late. I apologize, guys. Listen, I got this sweet setup now with this fiber internet, and that is fantastic. Problem is, thing went out on me at 7 p.m. Not ideal when you're going live at 8. So we are currently back on the old internet right now, which thankfully I didn't shut off yet because I wanted to see how the fiber went. I hope your picture stays fantastic the whole time. No guarantees. Yeah, we'll have to make that call a little bit later. No time to do it now, but welcome. I'm your friend Chuck. This is Buckeye Huddle Prime Time. It is Monday, August 11th, and thank you for joining me so much. We are 3 weeks out from the Buckeyes playing some actual football, but they did have their first internal scrimmage on Saturday. Got another one coming up this following Saturday. It was not open to the media, but we got a couple of nuggets that came out over the weekend. We also have some Texas nuggets to go over, as Texas also had their first intra-squad scrimmage of camp. Some interesting results coming out of Texas that I think bode well for the Buckeyes in that game one matchup. Penn State now starting to get some natty or bust kind of treatment from the media, which is pretty hilarious and not expectations that these guys are used to living up to. They pretty much always do exactly what they're supposed to do. They win when they're supposed to, they lose when they're supposed to, and they never do anything else. A lot of pressure added to Penn State, and their new whiz defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, maybe you heard of him. He took another passive aggressive shot at Ohio State, at Ryan Day, and there's going to be a big personal grudge when that meetup comes. Usually we don't get to see this kind of drama unfold in public display, but this is what the Big Ten needs it, frankly. I love coaches' drama. I think this is what made the SEC so much more exciting for the last 20 years. They got a lot of petty 50-year-old coaches taking public swipes at each other. We got it now in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten officially has arrived as of now. Now, speaking of the SEC, Tennessee told Georgia they were tired of playing second fiddle, went and got themselves a big driving arrest, and Auburn trumped them both with a drug trafficking arrest because that's how they roll down there. In the coaches poll that just came out, we had Texas number 1, Ohio State number 2, but that is not the number that's going to be next to those teams when they play. The number is going to be the AP poll, and we waited for that to come out. It has arrived today. 60 college football writers that cover the sport vote in that AP poll. How did they rank? What are those numbers going to be next to Ohio State, next to Texas' name when they meet up? Ryan Day spoke to the media today. He'll speak again next Monday. What did the boss have to say? He dropped another bombshell today. And to those of us who follow the minutia daily, this one can be viewed positively or negatively. We'll definitely discuss why here in a little bit. Ohio State's defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, from an X's and O's standpoint and an experience standpoint, this guy's second to none in college football. And that's what makes this new hire of Josh Boyer to the staff so interesting here. How does he fit in? What did Ryan Day have to say about him today at the press conference? I have seen some people pretty hesitant about this. I think it's all positive. But I've seen things like this looks like a panic move, like things aren't going good for Patricia, so they brought in his guy. I've seen it serves no purpose other than to bring Patricia in a buddy, which that's not how Ryan Day is operating. Ryan Day thinks he's a great football mind. He thinks he's a great culture fit. And I think this guy's going to be fantastic in the role that I think he's going to play. Well, let's listen to Ryan Day when asked about it by our buddy Dylan Davis from the Delaware Gazette.
Report this week that you guys hired Josh Boyer. I guess just what went into that process, how much did Matt push for that, and will his role kind of be like Matt being up the box, or Josh being up the box, kind of feed into Matt? I like to add into it.
We haven't really got into exactly what game day will be like, but actually, so Josh came in here in the spring. I knew Josh. Obviously, Matt worked with Josh and had a lot of respect for him as a coach, as a person. I think he's very, very intelligent. And actually, Josh is going to kind of help me a lot on offense and some of the things that he can do. So he's going to kind of go back and forth a little bit. We're going to kind of really iron out some of those things in terms of game day. But having somebody with his background can really help me on offense and identifying, what's going on the other side of the ball, with different structures. But he's also going to help Matt as well. So just a veteran guy that has a tremendous amount of experience, really intelligent, and I think he fits our culture. So, fortunate that we can add him this late, such a quality guy.
It does sound pretty fortunate, and it certainly sounds like he respects the hell out of him. We also did get that clip the other day, and I played it in my little video that I made, a one-off, where it was remember that podcast that Patricia did with Julian Edelman in the offseason? It blew up, and we were all watching clips from that podcast after Ohio State hired Matt Patricia, because it really showed, like, man, it was like a 3-hour podcast where he went kind of behind the nuts and bolts of how he operates, how he calls defenses. And he just came off really great. I think it put a lot of people's minds at ease. But in that podcast, he talks about this guy, Josh Boyer, and Julian Edelman's asking him, okay, so what happens? You identified the defense. What are you doing next to call plays? Like, okay, so I'm talking to Boyer. He's upstairs. He's my eye in the sky. He's amazing at that. And Edelman's like, yeah. So like Edelman knew right off the rip too. So this guy apparently has a reputation as being a total dog in this department. And I think that's what Ryan Day intends him to use him for as well. So he's up in the box and he is diagnosing what the offense, what the defense is doing, and relaying that to the offensive or the defensive coordinator for Ohio State. I think that he's going to fill into that role. In addition to that, he adds another really smart guy who's worked well with Matt Patricia in the past. He's got one hell of a resume for the role that he's in right here. He's not coming in to throw his weight around. He's also an Ohio guy. Now, there is a rumor, a nasty rumor, that despite being from Heath, Ohio, just outside Columbus, he is a Michigan fan. I've not been able to confirm or deny this, but we're still looking into it. I'm not so sure if people aren't just making up lies about him, but I like it. But let's talk about the Buckeyes in their scrimmage as Ohio State took the field, had an inter-squad scrimmage on Saturday, and a few tidbits, but nothing really super interesting other than, it's basically a lot of what we've heard the first 2 weeks, what we saw at the open practices. Two freshmen really stood out again on Saturday. Won't surprise who it is. Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson again showing out. When the lights come on in the spring game, in the scrimmage, whatever it is, Bo Jackson shows out and he does what he does. Now, after we heard from running backs coach Carlos Loughlin Thursday, essentially we heard nothing from Carlos Loughlin but sound bites. I was listening to Tom and Tony do their wrap-up show, our Tony Gerdeman and Tom Orr, and they were doing their wrap-up show after that press conference, and they were basically saying, like, every answer Carlos Loughlin gives is like something you could put on a T-shirt, and they're absolutely right. The guy's a quote machine. Remember soft batch cookies? And he's got a million of them, and he is great for a quote. Not great for information, though. He doesn't come off of much, and I don't know if that's by design or if he just would rather give his quotes. It sounds like sometimes like he's coaching the media. It's pretty funny. But he did say one thing, and he wanted to make this crystal clear. Nobody has done anything at Ohio State in his room. You guys keep saying 2 backs. I got 6. So he's not committed publicly to who is going to be carrying the ball, and he is not hinted at the depth chart, and he won't even come off that there's going to be like a 2-back system. Everything we're making here has just been off assumptions. Now, it's pretty logical to assume some of these things. James Peoples was the number 3 back last year. He looks very good. He was a highly touted recruit. Everything we're hearing sounds great about him. So it just makes sense that he's probably your number 1 guy, but who was he competing against in last year's room? Not anybody that was in this room. CJ is a senior transfer from West Virginia. Bo was at Cleveland St. Joe's. Isaiah West was at Philly St. Joe's. Turbo was in high school in Alabama. The only one on this roster was James, don't call me Williams Dixon. Sam Dixon. Sam Dixon was obviously in the backfield last year, but Sam's not the type of back that's going to push for a 1-2 combo. So it's James Peoples against 2 really unknown quantities in Bo and CJ, and they've both been looking really good. We just don't know who's going to get the bulk of these carries. Now, we would suspect it's going to be CJ. It's going to be Peoples, right? But what would hold Bo back? Only him being a freshman. But the guy's 6 foot, half inch, 220 pounds, and he came in ready to roll. And what's the only thing that holds young backs back is protection. And he's pretty much got that down from what we're seeing and what we're hearing, and seniority. That's it. Some position coaches play a little more on seniority than others. We're not sure how Carlos Loughlin plays that. We don't know. We've not had enough experience with him. We know how we did with Quinn and Trey last year. They obviously had seniority, but they were also the best backs, clearly. Peoples, a really good back. I'm very excited for him. CJ, also a really good back. I'm really excited to watch him run the ball, as I am with Bo. But like, I think you got 3 guys here that are ready to roll, absolutely ready to roll, which gives you a pretty deep running back room, and I love it. Sometimes freshmen are just that good and ready to roll. Now, my bold prediction entering in the spring was multiple times this year, Bo Jackson would lead this team in rushing. And a lot of people said I was crazy at that point. I think there are some people coming around, and this could be obviously the Ohio game, the Grambling game. It could be more. It could be more than that. And I think it's going to be very incumbent on James Peoples and CJ Donaldson to not give him a reason to put Bo in, because every time the guy gets an opportunity, he just flashes, man. He really does. He's great. It's giving me vibes, man. It's giving me different kind of vibes. Now, you could say I'm getting way too excited, and that's true. I usually do that, but I am very, very excited about Bo. In addition, Riley Pettijohn continues to show that he's going to work his way onto the field in some capacity. And my favorite thing that I have heard our guy Matt Patricia say so far is he likes to give people jobs. And I loved hearing that, because it just makes you think. So when you got guys that have earned playing time or are on the cusp, but they don't really fit in with the defense, it says to me, he is going to, when he's putting packages together, find a little niche role for somebody that deserves it and say, this is your job right here. This is your assignment in this package. Go kill it. And I could definitely see Riley Pettijohn being one of these guys that earns a job. And when he gets on the field, it's another lookout. The dude's ready to roll. Now, heading into last year, I was arguing with my good buddy Chris Drew. We were arguing about Cody Simon, kind of on his show and my show. And I thought he was selling Cody Simon short. And there was a big push last year to get your 2 freak athletes at linebacker, Sonny and CJ Hicks, and that it was Cody Simon who was just kind of being grandfathered in. And that wasn't really fair that he was being grandfathered in and he was an inferior athlete. My argument was Cody is actually a plus athlete. And one of the things I used to support that last year was his 10-yard sprint time. It's pretty important if you're a linebacker to be fast from 0 to 10 yards. Like, that's really important, much more important than your 40-yard dash. So here's a little argument that Chris and I were having last year when I showed him a little piece of information. Being grandfathered into that job before there was ever any competition or even conversation about it, it seemed. When I was at the Woody 2 weeks ago, I snapped some pictures. So the 10-yard dash, we've got Cody Simon right there in the middle of nothing but a bunch of DBs and wide receivers. Now, the 10-yard dash, pretty important for a linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got him in the 20-yard dash with a bunch of wide receivers and a bunch of DBs.
Is that Ballard below him?
Yes. So it makes sense when you see
In a
that
20-yard
Cody not
dash.
only obviously had the
Wow.
had it
Also
all
got
here,
him
the mental
in the pro
capacity,
shuttle. So
all the
now we're talking
intangibles that he brought.
Short area,
But
speed,
Cody also
and
a
change of
very
direction.
plus athlete. Now,
Cody Simon,
who is the fastest
is pretty damn
linebacker on
freaky,
this
bro.
team this year?
Yeah.
From 0 to 10 yards. Sonny, Arvell, Riley, Peyton, TJ Alford. Here are the 10 fastest times on the team from 0 to 10 yards. Now, who's number one? This is an explosion, right? This is explosive level athleticism from a dead stop to 10 yards. Number one on the team is Jeremiah Smith. Now, JJ, they told us, had gotten faster this year. This is all twitched up explosion. Jeremiah, in fact, was not in the top 10 last year. So legitimately, the measurables are faster, at least in 10 yards. A 1.44. Who's next? You got a 4-way tie at 1.45. Bryson Rogers. I keep telling you guys, the dude can float. Lorenzo Styles. Remember last year, Lorenzo, we talked about these boards here. And these, if you're not familiar, these are all the athletic tests that they do at the Woody. And there's 10 or 12 boards. There was only one guy last year who had his name in the top 10 on 5 of those boards. It was Lorenzo Styles. He's a very good athlete. He is the second fastest from 0 to 10 yards. James Peoples also tied. So James Peoples flying in 10 yards. That bodes well for him. In the fourth member of that tie, second behind JJ, is 235-pound Riley Pettijohn. Riley Pettijohn, the fastest of these linebackers from a dead stop to 10 yards. Again, very important for a linebacker to be super fast there. Riley is a big kid now at 235 and smoking dudes. I mean, he's up there with DBs and wide receivers and your 210-pound running back, and he's 235. So he's special. That's clear, man. He's just a special player, and special players play. Who's next on that list while we got it out? Davis Igbinosun and Bo Jackson come in next, and that next tier, big old Bo at 224 pounds at a 146, and at 147, you've got Brandon Innes and Carnell Tate, which means Bo Jackson and Riley Pettijohn are faster than two of your NFL receivers in that 0 to 10-yard range. Very important for backs and linebackers. So interesting stuff. But as far as quarterback stuff coming out of that scrimmage, coming out of camp the last 2 weeks, essentially status quo. Julian is the clear choice. He has continued to be consistent. We continue to be scolded by some that this is a quarterback competition. It's just kind of strange, man. Like on one hand, like I understand what these people are saying. We've heard from Ryan Day before that Justin Fields was in a quarterback competition, for instance, and they want to make sure that Lincoln gets treated like not like a peon, like he deserves better than that, and he does. Absolutely. But these same people that scold you that this is a competition then immediately turn around and say, well, Julian Sain's going to win the competition. Okay. Like, we get it, man. I've literally only heard one person this entire time say that they think Lincoln is going to start. And I mean, fans, media, one person. And I don't even know if that person stuck by that. But there were more people who thought Devin Brown was going to start over Big 12 champion Will Howard last year, many more. And from what I heard now, the first 2 weeks and what I saw, Julian is more consistent. He's more accurate at all levels of the field, particularly downfield. And Lincoln is a great athlete. He's a competitor. He's hardworking. Everybody likes him on the team. And he's working on mechanics and accuracy, but years behind when it comes to that kind of thing to Julian Sayin, which is no surprise. No knock on him. It takes a long time to get to that level. And, you know, if you can get to that level, Julian's got a little special about him with that arm. Lincoln did lead a touchdown drive down the field on Saturday, but brass tacks, great kid, a lot of tools. He's not on Julian's level, and that's fine to say. If this wasn't over midway through last week, it's over now. We're just waiting on the announcement, which I think will be next Monday. So I also would put forward that if Julian Sayin was 6'3", 225 pounds, this wouldn't be a discussion. 90% of the comments I see from someone who is concerned about Julian Sayin or isn't excited about Julian Sayin, the main reasons: he's short, he's small, he looks fragile, he's going to get hurt. I even hear people equate his size, thinking that he has a weak arm. They look at him, he looks a little smaller. Lincoln's big and strong, and they automatically assume that Lincoln has a stronger arm, which is not true. When we talk about just arm strength, they both have, average for this level of quarterback arm strength. Neither of them is smoking the other one. It's just a little annoyed that he's constantly underestimated because of his size. And, as a shorter guy myself, I can understand the frustration. I did a bit from the Woody last Saturday, me and Mark Givler. Now, Mark's 6'2", right? By the way, Mark's 6'2", Tony Gerdeman's like 6'4", Tom Orr's like 6'2". I'm 5'8" with my shoes. You know what I mean? So anyway, I got a text from my buddy Dan, and he told me, man, he did a really good job on that. And he's not usually very complimentary. I'm like, look at that. Little smile. And the next text comes through, stand up next time. There we go. That's Dan. But the best players on this football team are the Ohio State wide receivers. You've got to have a quarterback who can get him the ball. And that's why, Julian's obviously the right choice and always was going to be the choice here. The only question I have is, do they work in Lincoln in packages? And what are the merits of that? What are the pluses? What are the minuses? Well, you want to keep Lincoln sharp. You may need him at some point. You know, that's very possible. You want to reward him. He's been valuable to you. He's been, by the way, somebody brought up I think it was last week when the quarterbacks were talking. They brought up the Missouri game to Lincoln, and they were working an angle for a story, like it was some kind of redemption story. And it just like, it was clear he didn't like talking about it. It just seemed rude. Anyway, just totally off the subject. But you want to reward him. He's a valuable part of the team. He could be very valuable in the run game, and he opens up a different part of the playbook that you won't be running with Julian because you won't be so concerned about not getting him hurt, particularly in the red zone. And, you know, I'm a big proponent of the running game with the athletic quarterback. I love it, especially down by the goal line. And you also got two thumpers in CJ Donaldson and Bo Jackson. The negatives of this: rhythm, consistency. You'd like to see Julian get as many reps as possible and don't really want him coming out, getting cold, extending his time on the sideline. But I got to say, I think I'd be pretty excited myself if they were getting Lincoln involved in some kind of capacity there. And welcome back. Appreciate you. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. If you were watching me, Buckeye Huddle Prime Time at 8 p.m., we had some issues with the internet. The fiber internet went out at 7. I was using the backup internet, which used to be the reliable internet. And, it's been doing me wrong on live streams, which is why I switched to the fiber. Well, the fiber went out. We had to go to the backup, and no dice. Got kicked off. So I am going to complete this evening's episode, but that's okay. We're going to splice it all together, re-upload it. The point is, we're getting into the juicy juice of the episode. The best part was Ryan Day today. So Ryan Day last week, and then this week, has just dropped some bombshells. Now, heading back to the transfer portal, Ohio State brought in 2 transfer tackles, right? Ethan Anyanwa from Rice, Philip Daniels from Minnesota, the 5th and 13th ranked tackles in the portal, respectively. And shortly after Ethan Anyanwa signed, it was immediately thought, okay, this is a plug and play left tackle. He looks great. His film looks great. Let's be honest. This is what we would call a rental in this era of the transfer portal. He's a guy with 1 year. This year, you're plugging him in. He'll be off on his way. And since he's been at Ohio State, by the way, let's start here. Todd McShay probably did this guy a disservice, right? So Todd McShay, when Ohio State got him, said he thought he was a second-day pick. And that quote by Todd McShay in a game of telephone, one man's opinion, it became he had a second-round NFL grade. NFL scouts said he was a second-day guy. The ESPN draft guy, Todd McShay, said this. One man said this about Ethan Anyanwa, and I doubt he spent much time on him at all because he hadn't declared for the draft. So that's one guy's opinion. I doubt that was a consensus opinion, and I seriously doubt it now. Now, Phil Daniels, on the other hand, kid from Ohio, from Princeton High School in Cincinnati, went up to Minnesota, and he comes into Ohio State with 3 years of eligibility left. So Phil Daniels, when he was originally brought in, he had started, I believe, 4 games at Minnesota. He comes and maybe he's starting at right tackle was kind of the thought. And then in spring, our own Tony Gerdeman was the first to report here at Buckeye Huddle that the thought around the Woody about him was, he's probably not a starter this year. He's more of a developmental guy. And that was the first we had heard of it. We all assumed he was coming in to be the right tackle. Now, when you looked at him in the spring game, Phil Daniels versus Ethan Anyanwa, it was pretty clear Ethan, much more polished, and Philip Daniels looked pretty raw. He did have some things to work on. Well, that was then, and Philip Daniels is now at a full winner at Ohio State and a full winner with Ohio State strength and conditioning, and it has done him well. By the way, he's got, of all these offensive linemen, the most powerful looking bottom half, just thighs, the thighs are like tree trunks. And he's now, the last 2 weeks of camp, just surging. And we've just been hearing it day after day that Phil Daniels, his name keeps coming up. And we shouldn't be surprised, right? Because after all, it was Phil Daniels who was number 5 in that portal class. It was Ethan Anyanwa who was 13. Phil Daniels is the second highest rated transfer in this class, right behind Max Clare. He's thought very highly of. It was just more maybe a little bit of a long-term projection, but he has all the tools. Is this his breakout season? Did he have his breakout week last week? I think he did. And in the same week, we're hearing some things about Ethan taking some bad beats in pass rush. And Ryan Day tells us last week that Austin Sierreveld could potentially play left tackle. And he's been repping at left tackle. And he was asked to confirm that. He says, yes, left tackle. So that was last week's press conference. Then you had a good scrimmage on Saturday by Phil Daniels. And those of us who were talking about this over the weekend, is Phil Daniels potentially surging to contest Ethan Onyanwa for the starting right tackle position? Like if Austin's starting at left tackle now, could this actually end up with Austin Sierreveld at left tackle and Phil Daniels at right tackle with Ethan Onyanwa not even starting? Well, Ryan Day was asked about just that today. Here's what Ryan Day had to say about his offensive line today.
On both sides of that.
Yeah, you're seeing, Ethan's playing tackle, moving to guard. Tegra's playing guard, but, he can bump out the tackle as well. Austin, Phil, both playing tackle. Luke is inside. Carson's inside. Josh Padilla's inside. Gabe Van Sickle's inside. You're seeing Ian Moore play tackle. And so the idea of a primary and a secondary, I think, is going to really pay dividends down the road. But it's important as we get closer to this first game for guys to really dig in and get the majority of the snaps at where they're going to play. So, we're seeing Austin, take a lot of snaps at left tackle, and we're seeing Phil take a lot of snaps at right tackle. And Ethan is swinging and doing a good job. So, we'll see, again, by this week, again, we'll have more and more snaps, more information, and go from there.
Phillips kind of pushed ahead of Ethan at this point.
We'll see this week. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, there's enough on film to lead us to believe that we can win with both guys. Who ends up starting, we'll see.
So it is now 100% clear. And he says later on, Austin Sierreveld is only repping at left tackle. So Austin only repping at left tackle. He tipped his hand last week about it, kind of braced everybody for it. Like Austin, he's been playing some left tackle, and now he's just pretty much said it. Austin sounds like he's the left tackle, and that's just what it is. And if we spend a minute on this with Austin Sierreveld, I don't know that we've seen a more meteoric rise in a long time. We're talking about a guy who he stepped in when everybody was sick last year at this time. No, that was in the spring. In the spring, everybody was sick. They had the hand, foot, and mouth run through the offensive line room, hit him hard. Austin Sierreveld was bouncing everywhere. One of the places he was playing was tackle, of course. And I remember them asking him after spring when they did the offensive line, lightning round. And they're asking Austin Sierreveld about switching and playing guard and playing tackle. And his body language and his answer made it seem like he wasn't very comfortable playing tackle. He liked playing guard, and that was just fine because he went on to basically be the sixth man last year and rotate in at guard. And he had some ups and he had some downs, and he had a learning year. Overall, did really, really good. Well, to hear him come and now play tackle this year, surprising. The Iron Buckeye twice, surprising. And now potentially earning his way to be your starting left tackle, extremely surprising, especially because Ethan Onyanwa was supposed to be a plug-and-play left tackle, and not just any left tackle, but a very good left tackle. So it's natural to ask the question, does this speak more about the ascent of Austin Sierreveld, or does it speak negatively on Ethan Onyanwa? Now, when Day first brought it up last week, I think most people would just say it speaks to the ascent of Austin Sierreveld. But now, when you hear the following week that Phil Daniels is potentially challenging Ethan for the starting role at right tackle, well, now it makes you really question, is this a matter of Ethan just not catching on? Because he went from your starting left tackle, presumably, to your starting right tackle, presumably, to now fighting for his job at right tackle with Phil Daniels. And remember, he's got 1 year of eligibility. This is it for him. Your most expensive transfer portal addition was Ethan Onyanwa. And you spent a lot of money on this guy thinking he was your left tackle, and he may not start. Now, that's not great from a financial aspect, and we can get into the whole conversation about that, what that says as far as transfer portal itself, strategies. Everyone always assuming that the transfer portal is a sure thing, and they got to be there, and then they got to hit too, and they don't always. We might be seeing that out of Ethan Onyanwa so far, but that's a different discussion for a different day. Is it necessarily a bad thing here? I mean, aside from misappropriating those funds, if that's what happens, if Ethan's coming in off the bench as a sixth man and Phil Daniels is your starter, is it a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing at all. If Phil Daniels and Austin Saraveld are good tackles, it's not a bad thing at all. In fact, it's a great thing if you've got a guy like Ethan as another alternative for one of those guys should an injury happen or should you want to rotate him in a little bit. Let's not forget, what is our ideal situation here? Our ideal situation is Phil Daniels and Austin Saraveld, both with 3 years of eligibility left, go in there and tear it up this year. That's our ideal situation. So, yeah, we would rather if Phil Daniels and Austin Saraveld both beat out Onyanwa, because those are the guys we got heading into the future. Those are the guys next year that could potentially be your returning starting tackles in a year where you've got it starred as this is a national championship run year. And we'll talk about 26 here pretty soon, later this week when we talk about Texas, because the similarities between the Texas program and the Ohio State program are eerie, man. I mean, it is eerie how close these are. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. Not for today. But I'll tell you what's a surprise to me that hasn't been talked about much. Tegra. Coming into the season, I think a lot of us thought after the year that Tegra had that he would be the one getting pushed one way or the other. And Phil Daniels also, who can play guard, maybe he would be pushing him for guard. And I think it bodes really well for Tegra that we've not heard anything like that. We're not hearing anything about Tegra not playing good. We're not hearing anything about Tegra being in jeopardy or competing for his spot. And that tells us, I think, that we should feel pretty confident that Tegra has made quite a bit of improvement. And I'm looking really forward to that. So right now, when we look at this offensive line, it sounds like you've got Austin Saraveld as the left tackle. That's the way it's going to go. And that's just, I'm trying to wrap my head around it still. It's wild just because of the changes. Now, as far as the player and how it sounds, I mean, it sounds great because he's getting all this respect and love from everybody in the building. They're seeing every day that this guy is worth it. He won this, and that's awesome. So Austin Saraveld at left tackle, Luke Montgomery next to him, Carson Hinsman at center, Tegra Shabola at right guard, and now at right tackle, you've got Ethan and Phil Daniels. Now, I ultimately feel like Phil Daniels doesn't win that job. I think it'll be Ethan, but it's good to know that he's getting pushed so hard from Phil Daniels. I think it's a great situation. And if we look at now the 2 deep, okay, so if Ethan or Phil is number 6, that means Ian Moore's number 7. That is one heck of a number 7. Then you've got Gabe Van Sickle, Josh Padilla, Jake Cook, rounding out your 10. And after that, you got a guy like Carter Lowe, Javon McFadden. These are guys that are ahead of schedule freshmen that next year will be really, really good and ready to go. It looks fantastic. You still got the Armstrong twins in there who they're the only guys right now that aren't ahead of schedule. They're right on schedule. Everybody else seems to be like ahead of schedule, which is really cool. So that's what it's looking like. Ryan Day dropping another bombshell on us, and he's full of surprises this offseason. It's interesting, man. There are going to be some people. I'll say it like this. So based on what we've been dealing with the recruiting class and what's going on and the failure of spending money and the counter argument, I'd rather just go out and get an Ethan Onyanwa as a starting left tackle. I don't want to spend that money on a David Sanders. It's things like this. It's like, yeah, well, that doesn't always work either. You're risking it one way or the other. And that guy you've got for 1 year, like it does, it gives some ammo to the folks on that side of the argument, which I'm not on a single side of that argument or not. I think you pick and choose your spots and everybody's different. At any rate, Interesting stuff in the world of Buckeye. I'd like to ask you to please like today's show. If you haven't subscribed yet to Buckeye Huddle, I don't know what you're waiting on. It is honestly the most comprehensive show channel that there is on the entire internet if you're talking about Ohio State football. From recruiting to team coverage, you've got it all, and you've got multiple people doing every role. And that's pretty awesome. Now, as far as recruiting, Mark and I on the Skull Session podcast are going to be getting into upcoming Ohio recruits that we need to start looking for and looking at. In addition to that, we're going to be covering some high school games this year, which I can't wait for. So Buchtel going to play Massillon here real soon. I think August 22nd. I'm going to go to that game, and we're going to get some footage of Sincere, get some footage of Jameer Perez playing in a big time game at Massillon. That'll be really fun. I'll have some good stuff for you there. I'll talk to at least Jameer. I'll talk to Sincere for sure. Maybe Jameer after the game. So that'll be good stuff. And then we've got, I believe, the 29th, we've got Wayne High School and Jameer Brown heading to Pick Central. So if I end up going to the Texas game, and it looks like right now I think I am, I'll just go the night before, and Kevin's going to that game. So maybe I'll just join Kevin. We'll go check out Jameer Brown, get some footage of that. But that sounds like a fun time going to watch Jameer play, the number one wide receiver in the class of 2027. And he is just electric. I haven't seen him play in a high school game yet in person. So I'm really looking forward to that. But we got you covered on every front. So do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and we certainly appreciate you guys. Now, we have got updated odds and the AP poll. So updated odds, we've got Texas at plus 500, Ohio State at plus 525, Solo second for the Buckeyes at the MGM Grand, and Solo second by a decent margin as Georgia is at plus 700. So plus 500, plus 525 for Texas and Ohio State, Georgia, and actually Penn State tied with them at plus 700. Then you've got Oregon and Clemson at plus 900, Notre Dame and Bama at plus 1200, and LSU at plus 15 before you drop off a cliff to Florida, Michigan, and Ole Miss at plus 2,500. And Texas in the AP poll, just like in the coaches poll, has been given the number one pole position slot. As we look at the AP poll, Texas number one, and the difference here from the AP to the coaches at number two, the coaches at Ohio State, the AP has Penn State. Ohio State coming in at number three in the AP poll, which means the matchup between Ohio State and Texas will no longer be 1 versus 2 like we were hoping. It'll be 1 versus 3 in the Buckeyes, a 2.5 point favorite welcoming Texas into the game. Now, Texas had a scrimmage over the weekend as well, just like Ohio State. And boy, they got a lot more leaks, I'll tell you that, than Ohio State. It's much more difficult to get information from the Buckeyes scrimmage than it was from the Texas scrimmage. But the biggest takeaway from the Texas scrimmage, and number one, we knew what was happening with their offensive line. They had a big injury with one of the guys competing for the left tackle or the right tackle spot, I think. And it sounds like he's out. He's going to be out. He's not going to be for the Ohio State game of the season. I'm not sure, but he's not going to be in this race for their starting offensive line, where they try to replace 4 new guys. So they got 4 new guys coming into this offensive line, just 1 returning starter, and a defensive line where they got the edge guys. They have probably the best edge room in the country. In the interior, where they did have just a dearth of talent and just a couple of young guys, they went out, brought in 5 interior guys. In Hero Canoe, one of them, our guy, Murad Watson, the Syracuse kid that the Buckeyes were potentially in on in the spring portal, which is really the only option that Ohio State could have brought in. They didn't bring him in. Texas brought him in. He absolutely destroyed the Texas offensive line yesterday, along with his running mates. But Murad Watson was one of them as he fights for a starting role. And he and his cohorts just tore up the Texas offensive line. The offense couldn't get anything going. Later on in the day, our Arch Manning hit Ryan Wingo and they hooked up a couple times. But even their backup defensive line were getting after that offensive line. So what does that mean? Does it mean the offensive line is terrible and the defensive line is great? I think it's more of a bit of both. But the fortunate thing I think this says, I think it plays right into the Buckeyes' hands, to be honest. So where are the Buckeyes strong? Like, you got a very good Ohio State offensive line against a very good Texas defensive line. You got strength on strength there. Then you have what seems to be sounding like a pretty subpar Texas offensive line and an Ohio State defensive line with questions because we haven't seen them play together yet, but some pretty talented dudes. I like our chances in Columbus with a very loud, hostile environment in a really young line who's not been playing good in practice. That all favors the Buckeyes big time. And that alone makes me feel much more confident in my pick of the Buckeyes winning this game by 4 points. So Buckeyes win, Buckeyes cover.